Hello and welcome back to the Power Podcast. It's been a while, but we've taken a little bit of time to just get things rolling with the new workshop playlists podcast that we've been doing. But we're back with energy manipulation, finishing off everything to do with the elemental manipulation powers. We've got Alex and Kane with us today.
Hello.
Hello.
So, energy manipulation.
Sorry, just brilliant, as always.
This one's quite this one's at first it seems quite straightforward.
It's a bit nebulous, I think, because energy could be pretty much anything. I mean, with all the other powers, it's like, oh yeah, it's lightning, it's a particular element. But with like energy manipulation, it could be dark energy, it could be light energy, it could be like some magical force or whatever. It really does depend on the lore and
dark
canon.
energy. Dark energy sort of is a muddied water. I feel like because that's not really necessarily counted in energy manipulation. It's usually like that is just considered as darkness. But in energy manipulation, it's like, is it elastic energy? Is it potential energy? Is it light energy, like photons? Is it spiritual energy? Like any of those things, like soul wavelength, chakra, ki, magic, mana, which is usually the same as magic. Like the energy of the natural world, energy of gravitational force. There's a lot of different ways that people consider energy, and even like kinetic energy is another one. But we're really sort of going to be mostly talking about just like the things that are to do with just the power, which is, I guess I'll put my foot down right now. It has to be an actual energy that comes out like some kind of light force of some kind. It doesn't necessarily have to be a positive ability. I don't know why I just threw quotation marks up on there. You can't see me. But it has to fit within the concept of, is it light energy? Is it light? Is it plasma? Stuff like that. So it will only mostly be focusing on that. We might talk about spiritual energy as well as other forms of energy manipulation through that means as well. But that's the main sort of focus on it. We won't be talking about kinetic, elastic, and potential. We won't really be talking about those. So I guess this will be kind of like light energy and also spiritual, light energy, spiritual, stuff like that. Does anyone want to go first on the sort of usual things that we would expect to see with energy manipulation?
Okay. I'll go. I think Kane's probably going to be more practiced than me, so I'll just get mine out of the way.
I'm
So
also
the
eating, so yeah,
stereotypes.
go ahead. Go for it.
Oh, good. Oh, how convenient. Yes, this is my chance.
Yeah.
Well, I always kind of think of energy manipulation as like something, again, since we're overruling dark energy manipulation, it's definitely something that's light. Something that, because of the energy, you'd sort of generate it as something that's hot and active. It's like sort of a little bit like pyrokinesis and electrokinesis, but like more solid. It's like it doesn't have the telltale signs of like flames or electric sparks. I mean, it can, but typically not. It's sort of like a glowing sort of aura.
It's more of like
Is
a
where I
ray. I'd actually argue that it's
yeah.
often considered to be less solid than any of the other two.
Usually, but even better if it has a sort of sound effect to go with it. Like it has to be, in order to be energy manipulation, it has to feel like you've got something active at your command that's just kind of bubbling with literal energy.
That's
The stereotype. Anyway.
I'd say like in the terms of it, like the often usual one of light energy. That is the most basic of. It's energy damage. It's energy. It's radiant. It's whatever. It's glowing yellow or white or light green or light blue. often light red. It can usually just be any kind of light glowing color, but the most iconic would be blue, yellow, and oftentimes just pure white. Yeah, that's sort of it. I'd say often energy manipulators usually find a way to do stuff like energy blasts and energy beams.
That's the
Firing
most common.
that's the most common. As well as like shooting out rays of light that do random generic odd things. Like for instance, in certain different shows, you can see it where especially in live actions ones where they just like their hand glows and suddenly the light is so blinding that you can't see anything. We then cut to the next scene and the entire area is destroyed. It's like it usually has some kind of explosive force or power because technically a large enough light, powerful enough, theoretically can obviously create a large amount of heat. But yes, as for anything else, energy manipulation is often very conceptual. It's quite weird to put any tangibility to it.
Well, I'd say that's because unlike any of the other elements, it's very different because every other element, you could argue, well, it has some more physical form in the natural world. Like fire, wind, water, lightning, right? Because they're all things almost anyone has probably seen in their life. But energy is a lot more of an abstract force. Because theoretically it's in anything.
Yeah.
To a degree. So it's one of those things where it's commonly produced as basically just light most of the time.
Yeah, because it's relatively generic, and therefore they have to have some kind of physical force showing it.
But in terms of the abilities it has, it's a lot more abstract, because I guess you could say in a term, the way you can almost program energy to do certain things that even like fire and that lot really can't in most ways. For example, let's just get out there. Dragon Ball Z, one of the most common places you see this sort of thing, right? Basically, every character has it. You have techniques like the Spirit Bomb, for example, which is literally designed to kill specifically only evil people. And the fact that the way you use it is it's not generated from your own energy, but the energy of basically all living things that you can draw from.
It is literally a spirit orb that it becomes some kind of bomb.
But the fact that it itself can detect if something is evil or
not. To be fair, it's the way that I see it is that, like, obviously it's a god's technique anyway, but like the way that I see it is that like it's kind of like people can program their energy in Dragon Ball Z, because they can actually do that in a lot of different ways. They program the way that it works, like they make it operate in a specific way. Like it can cut through things. It can be like as if it's an explosive. It can embed itself into people and heal people. Energy, especially in the way that like key energy is done, is that it's based off of like a person's spiritual and life force, and the same with chakra in Naruto. But like in a show called Supernatural, they actually have the same sort of thing with like different spells and different abilities. You can even have it that certain people can learn weird witchcraft and stuff like that, and it can heal people, and it like combines and steals and takes energy. There's one guy who he basically infuses just basic poker chips with magic, meaning that like each one is worth a year, and if they lose multiple years, they then like rapidly age, or they suddenly go, like, their body de-ages if they win any of the tokens. So there's different ways that you can consider energy, like life force, time, and stuff like that. But we'll mostly talk about light energy manipulation because obviously it's the best one that we can focus through. We might branch off every now and again and talk about other ones, like the energy bending and the spiritual energy stuff from Avatar, as well as I just said, spiritual energy stuff from Supernatural, magic, and so on. But again, I feel like we'll cover those in another episode where we actually talk more about like the trope of spiritual power, spiritual energy, and also the tropes of magic. We might even actually have a whole section of different podcasts where in the Power Podcast we talk about the different concepts behind different magics, which I'd very much like to go into. But yeah, either way, we'll stick mostly on light energy manipulation. Flight is often an ability that they usually do. And any others, Kane? Any other common abilities that people with light energy manipulation use?
I wouldn't say it's super common, but like constructs is a way of using it.
Yes.
Making physical forms out of it. That's seen a lot more in like not exactly light energy, but they have in Black Clover they have light magic, and one of the main people you see use it makes constructural weapons and things out of it.
I mean,
So, I mean,
also
that-
just laser beams.
Oh
as
yeah,
well.
the most classic laser beams. But
was-
yeah, I mean, yeah, no, go on.
I was going to say, when it comes to light energy manipulation, you actually do have this very interesting sort of thing in a lot of cartoons and a lot of animation. You have it where people can create weapons and constructs out of light because they create what's known as the theoretical hard light, where it is basically light that is condensed into a solid form. You see this also in Halo with the energy swords and with the light bridges and stuff like that. They make objects and constructs and weapons that fire out, control, manipulate, and even are made of hard light. Which is basically, it's just a theoretical possibility or a theoretical concept of it's a structure made out of condensed plasma and or literally condensed light. And people with these kind of powers, often if they can make weapons out of light, that is often what they do, where they will make weapons out of condensed light. Usually having the ability to burn, blast, cut, and break things. So, yeah, fair. I think that's all the common ones anyway, out of the way. So yeah, I mean, in the actual podcast image, I've actually got the image of Virtue, who has 4 wings made out of light, which grant him the power of flight. Which are he makes constructs out of light, but only off of his back. I'm going to throw this out one because I don't think we actually talked about it. Light energy manipulation. There are also the things of making trickery with light, because light is literally the very thing that enables us to see. And if you can block, bend, refract, manipulate the very thing that enables us to see, you can't see. Welcome, this has been my scientific explanation.
Well done.
And it just, grants invisibility or light reflection, which can create illusions.
Yeah, if your energy manipulation in your universe allows such things, then obviously it's quite a powerful. Yeah, it's quite a powerful tool. Obviously, also technically allows you to see more things as well, as if you can manipulate light as well.
Yes.
UV changing the source of light that you can, I guess, see.
Black lighted rays and basically UV rays that creates a black light. You can also do
literally blinding people with flashbangs as well.
Yeah, creating such heavy condensation of condensed amount of lights, or just increasing the brightness to such a point that it just blinds people.
We literally had that in AnimiteTales as well with one of Sam's characters. That
well, it's actually part of one of the passive powers, which Sam did actually use to quite a decent extent. which was that you can have 3 different forms of the light. There's you can generate passive glowing light, which means that you can actually generate light in the dark, meaning that you can help other people see in the dark. There's a dangerous light or dazzling light, which basically means that you can actually hurt people's eyesight temporarily, meaning that they're temporarily blinded, or even making it have it that they have disadvantage on sight. And then the other one is just shooting beams of light that do damage. Sam used the blinding ability quite often, and it did work most of the time.
It was
Well,
very
yeah.
useful.
I mean, it's pretty useful considering it's one of, if not the main sight most people use. I mean, it's that alongside hearing, isn't it? So.
Yes, yeah. It's the main sense that people often use in tandem together, sight and hearing.
I mean, obviously, also another thing is speed. This having energy manipulation can grant you insane speeds depending on how you use it.
Depending on the canon, yeah, because there are different ways that people have it. It's like, oh, it just increases my speed, it enables me to enhance my speed, or I can basically turn my entire body into light, or even cover myself in basically a condensed armor of light that basically shields me from the dangers of moving at the speed of light. To be honest, that power alone, even if you can just fire a blast or manipulate things that can then move at the speed of light, or even if you can do that, that's great. But having the ability to move at the speed of light without basically bursting like a meat balloon, that is probably one of the most ridiculous powers in the entirety of any power. Speedsters that can travel up to the speed of light are basically broken. But if you're not even a speedster and you have the ability to get up to that speed, that is upsettingly overpowered. Oh, what's your ability? So I can manipulate light, make myself invisible, shoot laser beams, make myself glow in the dark, blind people. I can also move at the speed of light. I can move faster than anything else on this planet can physically move, including the very light that enables you to physically see. That is horrifyingly overpowered. But it's also kind of interesting because light also has a very interesting sort of little dynamic, which is, depending on the colour of the light, it's also depending on how fast it is. Which is very strange because this is actually a thing that happens with light and lightning. The light spectrum has different types of light that move faster, but also different types of light are actually also more potent and more dangerous. Green being one of the strongest types of light, along with white, purple and light blue at the top, and then red and yellow are right at the bottom. So red and yellow lights are actually the most sort of basic and the weaker sort of lights. But it's just kind of interesting to sort of see that. I think I already said this about the electricity. I think we talked about this in electrokinetic.
Yeah, I believe we did. Yeah.
But yeah, so I mean, those are all the different types of sort of things there. I'd have to say, with light energy manipulation, what could you think of it could be considered a downside to this power?
I mean, it shares the properties of light if we're holding that to account. So, you could technically have it theoretically that in terms of your movement, although you may be able to move at the speed of light, you can only travel in the same direction as light does, which is forward. So, you might have it that you're able to do blinding speeds, but you can only move forward and can't move left, right, or backwards.
And even if you can, who's to say that you'll be able to easily control when you start and stop?
Yeah.
Because even if you move at the speed of light for a second, how far are you actually moving?
Quite. Yeah. I mean, there's that, and obviously, your abilities might also be able to be used reflected if it shares the properties of light.
Yeah, some lights can be reflected by, well, reflected surfaces, mirrors, all sorts of different
Some
bits and
needing
bobs.
stronger than others, but
Yes, yeah.
it,
What about yourself, Alex? Any weaknesses or downsides that you could see that having this power would come with?
Hmm. I don't know really, other than just like, well, if there's anything to counter it, like it's kind of a problem. Like if someone's wielding dark and your power is light, that's kind of a problem. And also, like, well, if you don't have the ability to convert energy easily, it could easily, it could just be a bit of a problem. I don't really know, really. It's literally, yeah, that's pretty much covered everything that I can think of. Like, it can be kind of limiting as well. Like, if you can't, like, if it's just manipulating light and you just, like, if you could just dazzle people
I'd
with
say
it rather than, yeah.
I'd say there's a couple of different ways that you could go about doing it, but I feel like the biggest downside or weakness or limitation could be the factor of whether or not you can manipulate it, or if your power is only to
Yeah.
shoot blasts out.
yeah,
For
I mean, you've
instance,
got like the character out of
Cyclops.
Invincible. Not yeah, well, you've got Cyclops who literally can't really control and shoot out of the eyes. So
It's
you've
only
got
out
the
of his eyes, yeah.
yeah, but then you've got the character out of The Boys. I've forgotten her name, but she has like the form of light.
Starlight.
That's it. Yeah. Honestly,
Yeah, that's really
hers is
crazy.
very basic for the beginning, but then it gets a lot better.
You also see weaknesses and downsides to it because it's actually her like messing with the electromagnetic like energy or the electricity within a specific object, and that enables her to actually generate that sort of light. Because at one point she's out in the middle of nowhere and she only has a small car battery, and I think she burns it out very quickly trying to seal up someone's wound. And she goes, "I don't have any more power, so I can't use it." Yeah, that's kind of interesting. Laser eyes. This is actually something that I can't believe that we didn't actually talk about. The ability to shoot lasers out of your eyes is often one. Like, you can only shoot lasers out of your eyes. There is also different levels of control as well, like how hot they are, whether it's an actual pure laser that can cut through things, or if it's just, something that's...
Well, yeah, and then you got things like the Omega beams, which just constant track and...
Well, I feel like that's a very specific ability, but yes, it's basically he can only shoot them out of his eyes, but he can manipulate them, and they can travel and direct different and they can keep following and tracking people. Although they're very inconsistent in the terms of how they do things, because on some they instantly vaporize and disintegrate whatever they hit. In others, they basically are the equivalent of like tasing someone.
Yeah.
In others, they just explode on impact. So there's a moment where someone slightly was able to just time the dodge perfectly, so that then they actually like pass through something.
It's him rolling bad on the damage,
Yeah. Technically, yeah, it basically is him rolling bad on the damage. I didn't actually think of it like that way. Yeah. But yeah, every single one of those different things that we've just explained, they're all different forms of energy manipulation or energy beam emission. But they're all got different levels and layers to them. One of my favorite abilities that we actually have in the game is a thing called Prism Bomb, which is you store up light energy within an object, and once that object takes any points of damage, it then just explodes like a grenade, and it does energy damage all within a radius. I think the radius is equal to like half of the user's maximum radius normally. Half the user's maximum range. So I think it's like if you have 30, it's like a 15-meter radius, so it's a 30-meter diameter, which is insane. But the damage isn't actually all that much more powerful than the original. It's just like for extra bits and bobs if you need to like create traps, which I think is actually still pretty good.
Can you imagine pairing that with combustion manipulation as well?
Oh yeah, especially if you had like the explosion emission along with energy manipulation, because then you have like really good range abilities, and you can basically like launch yourself around like Bakugo from My Hero Academia, but while still also having like light energy manipulation like a Dragon Ball Z character. It would just be nuts. And you could create, obviously, traps and all sorts of different things. Man, that'd be insane. That'd be so
Yeah,
good.
I found a new OP combination.
But yeah, I mean, I'd say there are a couple of issues. Like, obviously, as we were saying with the light speed thing, on top of like navigation, there's also the thing of what if it can move you at the speed of light, but it can't protect you, and therefore, as you move, you immediately just get pasted as the sheer
Yeah, I mean, it
force.
depends. It depends if your ability is light manipulation or just energy beam,
Yeah.
like emission.
But often, yeah, as I said, often a common one is obviously flight and relative enhancement to speed. But yeah, constructs and all that sort of stuff, all constructs and all that sort of stuff. Also, depending on the specific universe they're in, light energy manipulators can often have the upper hand against unholy creatures, depending on whether or not people just considered light damage to be the thing that can harm dark creatures or monsters or something. Others would just say, no, it's just light energy and that's it.
Yeah, I mean, in some universes, it's more of a divine force, isn't it? That sort of a...
Yes, exactly. It's a similar thing as to when we were talking about darkness. Like, some would consider it to be a divine force, a primordial force, or a demonic force. It really depends on what universe it comes from. As for unique abilities, we'll go into this. Because we haven't done this in a while. So, unique abilities, unique variants of the abilities, or even a unique ability or skill, SPMA, so on and so forth, that you would use with this ability, or that would alter this power. I've already said the whole wings thing, like, as I said, like, generating wings out of...
I have an idea.
Oh, okay,
I
go
may
on.
go first. Mine would turn the power into star manipulation, in which you formed orbs of light. And that's the only way you can use your light manipulation, is you can only use any of the abilities first once you've made what is considered the star.
Okay.
And then if we're going based off the based off the AnimiteTales system, it would be you can only generate them though, 1 plus maybe like every certain amount of SPMA you have. Which for those who are watching for the first time is basically your ability to manipulate your power.
Yeah.
These constructs would have I'd say either about like half the health, or their health would be equal to maybe like half the damage you could do. So they'd only have like 4 health, so someone's very basic punch could break them. But it would basically mean that instead of just shooting beams from your hands, you could move these around, be a very small form of energy manipulation, but only on these stars.
Okay.
But then you could, like, say, shoot up a star into the air and then use the dazzling thing. Now everyone in the room is blinded.
So you, instead of having it where you're the central node where the light comes from, you could create an orb, let it float off into the middle of a room, and then just go, okay, now that generates the blinding light, and now, you know, I've got
and then
another
maybe
orb
like the 2 other stars start shooting people with the laser beams while they're all blinded.
See, that would be really cool. That's actually really interesting.
That's Jubilee.
Yeah, and then
They're
maybe
making Jubilee.
Yeah, and then maybe
Yes.
even later on, you could link the stars up with energy and then fling them around.
Oh my, like creating sun mode or something, like
Yeah,
bringing
and
all these stars
and then
together.
if you got energy
Oh.
beam manipulation, you could like make walls out of them. Say like you made like a rectangle by putting the 4 like stars at each corner, and then the beam links them up. And now in the middle, there's a wall made of light.
You could call it what was it? You could call it you could call it horoscope. Because like the just loads of lines connect together and then just fire out a massive beam at the end, sort of thing. That would actually be quite interesting. You can have one based
my next
on
unique attribute character. Then.
Definitely, that would be interesting. I'd love to see that. Alex, what about yourself? Do you have any?
Actually, yeah. Well, I'm gonna have to out myself as a Steven Universe fan again. And my unique attribute and just weird spin on the power B, as well as creating just like light sources and stuff, it would be I'd be able to do hard light constructs. and they would be sort of, I guess, kind of pairing it with effigy animation, where I could create.
Knew it.
Yeah, just hard light constructs.
Everything so far is stuff that we've already talked about. Why would you care about constructs? I mean, the effigy animation. Here we go.
Yeah, exactly. And it was just like you could create little nightlights, basically, that are like semi-autonomous, and they could guide people on their journeys through the dark. Like you create a little hard light dog that glows, and it will always be visible and see everything, and it would just
also depending on the way that you could do it, because you could actually have it where you generate like hard light. Or, you create a construct, the shape of a person, the shape of a dog, the shape of a wall or whatever. And then you go, all right, effigy, slam, and then you basically grant it that, level of semi-sentience or even, the ability for it to move about on its own. Now you have a semi-living creature out of light. If you have reanimation, and then you had golem hearts, in other words, like blood transfused objects that is infused with the effigy animator's blood, you could then have it like, okay, this is their core, this is their, I guess you could say, some kind of like stone of some sort, or gem, who knows? And it's infused with the person's blood. It's infused with the person's blood who has this power. And when the orbs are activated, when these stones, these golem hearts are activated, they do that. Now, the funny thing is, if the user has stone, if I'm remembering correctly, the stone ability plus with reanimation grants you an ability where you can make golems that are self-aware and no longer count themselves as your own minions, meaning that you can make as many as you want. Only problem is you can't force to control them anymore. They have their own free will. So you're literally creating...
Made their own crystal gems.
You're literally creating your own, like, technically a whole new race of beings. But they would be made out of light. Their health would be... let's say, for instance, their health could be the amount of effigy health plus the amount of light energy that they're made out of. So, for instance, either based on a random roll or just based on the user's maximum damage. So, let's say, for instance, if it was even just like, oh, I only can do a D8, it's still that thing of, well, they have 8 plus whatever the effigy health is, plus however good your roll is, also could be dependent on what category they are. Are they a small creature? Are they, medium size? Are they like up to 1 meter's height? Are they up to like 2 meters, 3 meters, 5, 15? Are you going to make giant Goliaths out of this stuff, or are you just going to make humanoid, human-sized, human-heighted creatures that all have their own levels of sentience? And at that point, you technically almost create your own race using that power.
As many as I could live my dream of creating gems if I had the power.
New character ?
Yeah, again. Live my fan fiction.
I think to be honest, just me talking about those has already sort of done me in. I was just going to say the original one that I did was wings for a character called Virtue, but it's also technically a unique attribute that people can gain, learn, or teach, or be taught an ability at some point, which is the unique attribute known as wings, by people in a... Yes, it's in one of the modules for this game. Again, still playtesting and stuff, but it's in one of the modules that we actually haven't done yet, which is I think it's like what is it called? I think it's called the God's Handiwork or something like that. But it's basically the concept of it's set in Eden, and it's the whole concept of how dangerous like writings are of like previous generations are when people don't understand them. Not that that's taking away from anything that actually happens in the real world or anything, not at all. But the idea is that eventually beings see like these depiction of angels, and they eventually self-actualize their powers by giving themselves wings, halos, and all other things. They eventually believe themselves to be angels and demigods. Because of this, they populate a city that is from an ancient civilization known as Matrata, and they basically take over it and they call it the Holy City Matrata. They all believe themselves to be divine beings or have divine purpose. With that being said, they all have this unique attribute, these wings, that grant them flight and speed and all other stuff. And the downside to them is whatever the wings' weaknesses are, if they're hit by a specific thing that is their weakness, the wings are disabled for a certain amount of minutes. Meaning that they even can't use their powers. For instance, with Virtue, if darkness hits his wings and devours them, he can't use his light. He can't shoot beams of light or generate or manipulate light for anywhere between 4 to 6 minutes. So, it pretty bad.
That's like his whole thing.
Oh yeah, that literally is his whole thing. But yeah, that's kind of the sort of more interesting sort of ones. I have to be honest, I like both of your ideas, to be honest, though. I really do like that. Like, I love the concept of being able to come up with new, weird and wacky ways to create things that don't just disappear once the powers are done, or don't just disappear when the person's dead or nullified. But I also really like the concept of weird, tricksy ways of creating a power to make them work in different ways and have different themes, like the star thing. I really like that. That's so cool.
I'm gonna have that character in something, but I'm gonna give them a really twee superhero name like Twinkle.
Oh dear.
Well, it might be my hero character, so watch out.
I mean, Alex, you still got to play the Avatar build in the next campaign.
I've got so many characters.
Yeah.
I can't wait for that.
Well, I can at least name their hero name Twinkle Twinkle Star.
Yes. Then I'll be happy.
I was honestly, I thought that it would have been a perfect opportunity to be called Astronomer or
That would be
Astrologist.
Or like Stella.
The stellar hero.
The stellar hero, the Astrologist. Oh no, who's gonna save us? It's the stellar hero, Astrologist. He's come to save us. Twinkle, twinkle, little star, and then like when he disappears, he goes, "Just remember, if ever you're in need, just wish upon a star." Man, he's got a lot of star puns, hasn't he? Anyway, I need to get out of here. Stellar ride, yo! And then he just gets in a car.
As he's flying away, he pulls out the notebook and just starts taking them off.
Yeah, well, good. Now all I need to do is just find some way of getting Penta in the next thing. Yeah. It's that moment as like he crashes in and it's like they're like weighing up the gold bars. He goes, "Sorry guys, gonna have to stop you counting up your pentagrams." That was actually pretty darn terrible. I'm very sorry.
They just give up at that point. It's like, yeah, you know what? You got us. Yeah, we don't have to fight. Just take us in. It wasn't worth it.
Oh dear. Well, I hope you've learned a valuable lesson, son.
That's
No,
actually how he beats his enemy. He breaks their morale with terrible jokes.
Please,
So they don't have to
God,
fight.
please stop. Just let it end. I'm sorry. Damn it. Well, I was already going to ask this question, but Alex, you've already given a pretty decent answer to this. What secondary power, if your character was an anomaly, or if they had a secondary power, what secondary power do you think would be paired really well with energy manipulation?
I mean, other than effigy animation, which would be my go-to. I definitely also think combustion manipulation, like what we said before, but also like, weird. You know what else would be kind of cool? It would be, I don't know, either chemistry manipulation or like hydrokinesis, because I kind of want to do what Bill did in his character, the giant light gel, sort of the glow stick bunny.
Yeah, he was a light energy mimic because okay, so some backstory on this. There was a character in the campaign had the ability of Black Flame. It was just a fire mimic who, instead of doing fire damage, he just did dark damage, but it worked similar to fire, so it meant that it could be put out by water. Eventually, Kane had a character called Crollo, where when copying people's powers, they would become the exact opposite of what they were originally. So, when he touched Black Flame, he got the power to become a liquid energy mimic. So he was basically the equivalent of like glow stick water. I don't know, like it was just
Glow
basically
stick
water.
Yeah, like glowing water that did energy damage, which was kind of unique. Eventually, Bill got that power, like he was able to store it up in himself because he had a character called Nathan who can store up powers. And again, I really hope that he makes it into the revealing campaign, but again, I don't know. But anyway, so he ended up with this moment where he jumped into the ocean, transformed into a large, like, liquid creature of just pure energy and like liquidized energy, and it was terrifying. Also, because at the time he had stolen some anthropialism, so he actually looked like a bunny. He basically had like this giant mountainous sludge monster bunny thing made out of liquid energy.
I love it. I mean, I think that was probably my best thing. And if I was going to have like
We
a
used
power,
to
it'd
be
be
way
like
goofier than we are now.
I mean, you're
Well,
implying
I
that
don't
we're
know
not
about that
goofy
one.
now. I mean, we're pretty darn
Yeah.
goofy.
I
Silly,
mean,
yes.
if I was gonna go for a power, probably the obvious one for me is sound. Because
Light and
then you
sound,
can
yeah.
just control, because then you can just completely screw over someone, and you have the most trickery two
Especially if you
abilities
have
together.
the light manipulation of transparent.
Yeah, if you take both
and
light
silent.
manipulation, you could, because you could technically, with energy manipulation, you could cover your entire party in light, so you'd make them invisible, and then you could make everyone in your group silent, so they cannot be seen and cannot be heard.
Yeah, and the only way at that point, the only way that someone would be able to notice it is if by some weird reason or by some way that you were making tracks.
You'd
Or
have to
even
have like
that
a
there was
sensory
mist.
ability.
Yeah.
Yeah, or something like that, yeah.
That would be mental.
Yeah.
So from
And technically, you could also just stop the light from coming near a person and just make them blind,
that's true,
and
you
then
could
just
also
deafen them.
you could
So
also cover them in a dome of silence, therefore temporarily, like meaning that they're deaf as well, and
yeah,
they
so they
also
can't
can't
see and
shout
can't
out.
hear.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah. I'd say
You'd be the ultimate serial killer.
for me, I'd actually say
Yeah.
energy manipulation is great. I think that there's so many different ways that you could actually go about doing it. I do like Bill's old idea. I want to bring this up before I actually cover the one that I want us to talk about, which was decay, where like it's basically the equivalent of radiation. Where like it hits you and it does energy / decay damage. A crossbreed of basically the equivalent of just radiation damage. And I love that because that's terrifying. But for mine, there's so many different ways, because if you wanted to go for the whole angel build, you could always do biokinesis. So you could do it like, I now shoot you with light, and now you have been healed, or something like that, or even just the fact that you have lay on hands or cure wounds or whatever. I'd actually say photonic empowerment.
I was thinking that one. Yeah.
Yeah, because
Literally power yourself.
Technically, if you had energy manipulation or even radiant mode, you technically have the ability of flight, super speed, energy manipulation, all of these different things, invisibility, whatever. But then on top of that, you can also generate an object of light. Like if you can make a construct of light, and then you just go, okay, well that's from the energy manipulation power, but it's not from the photonic empowerment power. So I can now store up energy from the photonic empowerment.
The most OP thing actually you could do, if you're talking about damage, is use Essence of Light, store up a stupid amount. But then, because you can manipulate energy, you can fire it off however you want.
Dude,
and on top of that, you can then, if you have the other mode, the what's the evolution called?
Radiant mode, or do you mean the
Radiant mode? If you have Radiant mode, you can then times that your energy damage on top of that and just fling it at someone.
Yeah, because you can times that by 2. Yeah, as long as it's energy that you're grabbing. Yeah, I will say also, Child of Sunlight. It turns any of your energy into solar. Well, technically, if you just use a usage style where you just have like that power ability where you do so, you could literally just do the Escanor stuff. where you just generate a massive like ball of energy and go, all right, well now this ball of energy, thanks to this usage style, is now doing like, I don't know, 2d10s or even more points of damage, and then it just goes boosh. It's now basically a miniature sun.
The only thing you'd lose is the ability to power yourself. That's the only thing you'd lose.
Technically not. You can still gain it from energy. It's
Okay.
well, technically you can get it from energy, but it's not from basic light. So technically it would have to be you'd have to create it and then basically like try and hurt yourself with it. Which is quite funny because it's like you can only gain it from fire and energy if you have been struck by it. But sunlight is like, obviously you're in and around sunlight areas. And on top of that, it's also solar damage is also fine. So if anything mimics the ability of solar, in other words, crossbreed between fire and energy. By the way, crossbreed is kind of like in D&D where you have like, say for instance, you have like, this attack is technically plasma, but so therefore it burns and it can also electrocute. So therefore, like it's lightning or bolt plus fire. But the way that it works is that you don't roll fire and then lightning. You actually just roll the whole damage dice, and whatever the opponent is weakest to, it counts as only that. However, if they are equally weak to both of them, they take an injury equal to both of those two things. For instance, they could be paralyzed and also burned, or they could be doubly burned, or even have nerve damage, meaning that certain parts of their body might not work properly for X amount of time or permanently. Solar does energy / fire, meaning that like it generates large light. It works like the sun, and it also means that the user can get doubly burned. And again, it's just a whole nasty thing. Crossbreeds are some of the most difficult things that you can get in the game, but if you can get your hands on them, you're pretty much guaranteed that like somebody going to get hurt real bad. But yeah, that's my answer to that question anyway. But yeah, photonic and energy manipulation. It's funny because we're now going to go into the section of like how well it sort of works. In theory, it's a very good power. There are many different ways that it can be used. And Kane,
I think it's like this. Yeah, sorry.
I was just going to say, and Kane would know, because you've actually played as a character for a long period of time who had an energy manipulation power.
Yeah.
You played as Anarche, the quote unquote punch drunk fight monkey Animon child, where he was just a random guy from another
bit rude.
universe.
Everyone called him that, really, but
everyone called him that, punch drunk fight monkey, where all he wanted to do was always just fight people.
We didn't call him that to his face because he was so powerful and killed a lot of people.
Everyone called him that to his face. The party didn't.
People that betrayed me. There's a slight difference.
Yeah,
and maybe a couple of others, but they.
You can't say that. Only my friends can say that behind my back when I'm not listening to them. Otherwise, I'd deck them in the schnoz.
Yeah. Otherwise, I join that list. But anyway.
Yeah. But I'd say like from what I saw from it, it's more unique as well from just fire or
very
lightning.
Flexible. That's one of the best things about it.
What would you say? What would you say is that are the best things and the worst things about it?
Okay. Well, the worst things, at least in this game, is it's not exactly a rare damage type. So running across people with the ability to resist it or even gain power from it is not an uncommon thing. I don't know, because I didn't have my energy abilities weren't as extent as the normal power of energy manipulation. But yeah, I don't know. The thing is it doesn't have many weaknesses. apart from, because although you could say dark energy, that's more of just that it's opposite. It's only a weakness if it's stronger than you, which is a lot of things. Like, that's not really a weakness, I guess.
Yeah,
At least in the way I view it, because technically you could also beat your opposite as well. So
yes, yeah.
it's just more of an annoyance. But yeah, apart from people being able to resist it like fairly easily if they have the right stuff, I don't know. It doesn't really have many downsides, at least as far as I can recall. Because it's not limited by atmosphere or anything like that, unlike a lot of other elemental abilities.
No, absolutely.
So it can exist basically everywhere.
I mean, this is actually a question for you, Alex. You've never used energy manipulation at
No,
all.
I haven't.
Out of all of the elements, you said that like there are quite a few ones that you wanted to play. I'm super surprised that you've never wanted to go into light due to, especially because of the Steven Universe thing.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's kind of weird because I never really thought of it like that until now. Mostly I think of it in terms of like, Starfire or Virtue, where it's sort of like just wielding laser beams and like, yeah, I know that's cool and everything, but that's just not really my thing. I'm kind of like, all right, cool. I don't know. I guess because energy seems a bit detached from like elemental stuff. There is something really sort of primal about wielding fire or lightning and stuff.
I mean,
With
also,
energy, it's a bit, yeah.
I mean, okay, let's put it this way: Telekinesis, Telekinesis, Pyrokinesis, and Hydrokinesis. Environmental abilities. They're just like lightning. I mean, yeah, lightning is super dangerous, and it's actually a relatively quite rare damage type. And yes, as Kane, you said, like energy isn't as rare as you'd like. It's at best uncommon. It's not super rare. And because of that, that means that like there are more people with resistances to it. Fire is actually, in the terms of powers, is actually super common because you have the characters that can turn into dragons. Although now they can choose what breath they have, therefore they can choose the resistance. But you still have it that there's the phoenixes, pyrokinetics. You've got fire mimics. So that's 3 powers that basically start off with fire resistance and fire abilities. But you've got, for energy beam emission, you've got just energy, and then you've got I think that's about it. Obviously there's the Animon children as well, but I think that's it other than photonic empowerment. So there's that's still 3 powers. But
it just didn't really tickle my raspberries.
But no,
as
that makes
much
sense.
as anything.
But it's also the fact that, as I said, it's environmental. Like, oh, there's a great big fire over there. Cool, I'm just going to spread it now. Welcome to hell. With water, again, you can just create a massive like tsunami, or with Telekinesis, I can shape the entire battlefield. I mean, literally, when we were playing in Haskonia, the most amazing moment was, oh no, there is backup coming into this underground bunker, and then, don't worry, I've just made 7 pitfalls where all of them fall down 100 meters because that my range is insane. And it was like, well, okay, we don't have to fight minibosses. And Alfie, who was playing Legion at the time, missed out on a whole like 1v1 miniboss fight because they fell down a hole.
Time powers, forget it. Get time child versus Hole. Hole wins every time.
Hole wins every single time.
I tell you what, though, like with now that I've considered effigy animation and hard light constructs, I will reconsider my no energy manipulation stance. I didn't really have a stance. It's just sort of like
it was
it
never
just didn't
interesting
attract
to
me as
you,
much.
as you said. Yeah.
Yeah, but now it's interesting. I can create a city of crystal gems.
I think that power would work very well with those two. I mean, you'd also have to find ways on getting yourself like a lot of effigy hearts, but to be fair, again, you can make it with stones or gemstones or animite, or even just random objects. Like, here's a ring. It looks like the effigy is wearing a ring, but the truth is that the ring is imbued with my power, and that's its core, which is quite interesting. But yeah, I'd say there's a lot to unpack with this power. I mean, what about yourself, Kane? Would you ever go back to energy manipulation?
Oh, definitely at some point.
I mean, especially with the stellar ability now.
Oh yeah, no, that one's. I've had that one in my in my mind for a while.
Since Black Clover?
Yeah. I think a bit
Original
before
character.
it
not Steel.
was a bit before, but then that kind of sold me on the idea
Yeah.
because I've always had a fascination of stars and etc. But yeah, I definitely do want to go back to it, but I've left it alone for quite a while since playing one. It's the same with lightning.
Yeah.
I've left it for quite a long. It's one of those powers I'll go back to, but I need to use it differently if I'm going to. So
I think for me, I potentially would go to it if I could do the Escanor type like build where I do that, but it's not necessarily Escanor. It would probably more than likely be very similar to Virtue, where they have the whole wings and light energy manipulation, and then also the ability of photonic empowerment, getting up to the point of child of sunlight, and therefore like they have wings of light that can also then be turned into wings of solar energy.
So more Mael.
More Mael, yes. You sort of already
basically.
sort of got where I was going with this.
Yeah.
Yeah. Damn it, I love Mael. He's one of my favourite characters in that series for many reasons, but he is actually quite charming, damn it. But yeah, I think to be honest, that pretty much covers everything, unless if anyone else has anything else to bring up that they.
Unless we move on to more like mystical forms of energy manipulation, then.
I mean,
I think that's about it.
Yeah, I mean, this is mostly light energy manipulation. We might talk about other forms of energy manipulation at other points, especially mystical and magical, because I'd love to talk about mystical and magical powers. Dive more into the whole gods and demigods thing, because we actually sort of brushed up on it at one point and actually did a power podcast on it. But I think going back into it at some point would be kind of interesting, talking about magical and mystical powers. So yeah, I mean, unless if Alex, you've got anything else to say about this one?
Nah, I'm afraid not. I'm just writing up my Crystal Gem Creator character so I can live my fan fiction finally.
Well, I mean, that's pretty much it. I mean, I'm probably at some point going to write the Mael version of Virtue now, so
I guess I better write up my star one then.
Absolutely, you can tell that it's good when we actually like talk about a power and we're like, oh my gosh, I actually want to play this character.
It's happened so many times. It's like I'm just thinking, I'm not really interested in this power, and then we just go into it, and it's like I really like this power now. This got possibilities now.
So, I mean, I don't even have to ask the question of would you guys take these powers? Would you guys like these powers? Would you guys have these powers? Since you're literally currently writing characters for them.
Yeah,
one of those powers where it was one of those powers where if I got it, I can't be upset about having it.
Yeah, me too, really.
It's one of those things that even if it was like in a one-piece setting where it's like I sacrifice the ability of swimming and I gain this ability to generate and manipulate light energy, I'm not gonna lie, I would be like, who cares about swimming? Swimming what?
As long as I can surround people who can swim, then sure, yeah, I'm good.
I mean, it's not even just that. It's just that thing of like I'd give up at least something to have this power. Like, I don't know what it would be, but at least if I got to choose it, like, well, swimming would definitely be the first to go. It's such a cool power.
I think that's it, though, really. I think it's like, it's such a cool power!
That's
our end note.
That's pretty much it. Thank you very much for listening, and also, if you have been watching any of our current episodes, this has been the Power Podcast, where we talk about powers and other tropes in fiction. If you enjoyed this, definitely check out in the links below, or even check out the AnimiteTales channel. I don't know why my intros are so bad, but that's it. Like and subscribe, and of course, if you like to have a look at any tabletop RPG stuff, we do AnimiteTales Dev Plays, where we currently are developing and playtesting the game known as AnimiteTales. Have a look, have a good time, and have a good night.
Bye!
Bye.
Ciao, ciao for now.